Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on this video, which is about validating and submitting Shared Ownership and Affordable Homes Programme 1621 offers. My name is Susan Roberts and I'm the agency's IMS Training Manager. This video was recorded in June 2016. That means it reflects IMS at that point in time. So the next slide in this presentation will have some timings for the video. So when we come to validating an offer line, it will give you an approximate time within there. That's in case you want to fast forward within the video at any point when you come back. So what am I going to cover? So first of all, I'm going to look at the steps that you need to bid for the 1621 programme. The video will then concentrate on the common IMS error messages and what they are telling you and how you would go about fixing those. It will then move on to look at validating offer lines and validation errors when you both save and when you validate. I'll then move on to validating offers and some of the errors you might find there, and finally look at what you need to do to submit your data. All the data that you'll see in this video has been specifically set up in IMS for training and is not live data. You won't be seeing anyone's live data in the video. Remember, this is a video, so you can stop, rewind and repeat at any point in time. So now the stages of bidding for Shared Ownership and Affordable Homes Programme 1621 and the process in IMS. So first of all, who are you going to work with? That is your partnership. So you'd input your partnership details in IMS. Then how much money for how many units by tenure? That is your offer. So in IMS, you would create an offer and offer agreement. So that will have your units, your tenure mix and contributions, but you don't actually enter any data in there. The data will populate from data that you enter in offer lines. Then, where are you going to develop? So that is your firm and your indicative sites, and they form your offer lines. So you would add an offer line for each firm site and each indicative bid, remembering to complete any additional information responses as shown on the Additional Information tab, and that's new for 1621. You would then save and validate each offer line, responding to any error messages as you progress. You would then move to validate the offer, again responding to any error messages, and finally you would submit that offer to HCA. Error messages you might get when saving offer lines. So the first error that I want to show you is one that you might get if you created some offer lines very early on in the bidding round, or you might get the same error as you move through setting up an offer. I haven't got an early offer line that was set up, so I'm going to show you the same error that you would get as you move through. So I've entered my geography information. I'm now about to enter my products. And whenever I try and click on anything or to save, I will get a message saying that construction innovation must be specified. So that is down the bottom, and you would select the drop down and select the appropriate option for your site. So let me stick hybrid on mine, and then you would click on save. Okay, if I try and do anything else now, I don't get an error message. So I'm now going to show you an error that only appears on indicative lines and is when you're adding the unit data right at the top. So I've added 40 units, funding requested against it, and I'm now going to put a number of rural units in there. Okay, so enter some rural units and click on the save button, and I get an error message telling me that the number of rural units, so that's this number here, must be equal to or less than the number of units. Okay, so it wipes the item for me, and now I can enter in another value. So let me put in 40 and click on save, and this time it successfully saves. So the next error I'm going to show you applies to both firm and indicative lines. So I've added some capital contributions And I've entered the values that are nil values. I'm now going to click on the Save button. Okay, so it says amount pound must be specified. Click on OK. What it's done is it's taken me to the first line. So on these, if there are zero values in there, we need to enter it. So we need a value for every item here. So let me click on 0 and then click on Save. I'm now going to get a second error message. So it's mandatory data of the above contributions, how much borrowing is tended to be secured under an affordable homes guarantee, and that must be specified. So click on the OK button, and that's taken the cursor to the bottom of the screen where that question is asked again. So you enter an appropriate value for your scheme. I'm going to enter 0. And now when I click on Save, I get no error messages appearing. So I've now moved to the Delivery Profile tab, and the error that I'm now going to show you only appears on indicative offer lines. So let me click on the Save button on this screen. Okay, so it tells me the total payment for completions does not match the completions payment control, and it gives me the two values. So let's click on OK. If I look at these values, I can see that yes, they don't add up to the value below. And if I double check the values against the starts, because I wasn't getting an error message on starts, I can see that the first item is the same, but the second item is £100 different. So I've entered an incorrect value. So let me correct that value and click on the Save. And this time when I've clicked on Save, no error messages are identified. Error messages you might get when validating offer lines. So I'm now back to the main offer line screen, having added all my data. So I'm now going to look to validate this offer line, and I have set up some errors on the offer line. So let me click on Validate. Okay, so I get a message telling me there's an error on the subproduct where the total units doesn't match the sum of the individual indicative unit types for rent to buy. So let me click on the Close button and then go into the rent to buy line. So it's telling me rent to buy. If I had multiple there, it would tell me which subproduct name to click on. So it told me rent to buy, which is the only choice I've got. Okay, and it was under units. And it's telling me that things aren't adding up. So this indicative line had 40 units on it, but when I actually look at the unit details, I've only got 21 that are showing there. So I need to add more unit data. So click on the New button to get a new line. So it's 19 units. They are general needs. The number of people is 2, and they are 1-bed units. And this time the size is 40. So click on Save, and then click on Save again. Oh, first of all, I will check 40 there, 40 there. So they look like they're going to match this time. So Save, and then close that window, and then click on Validate. So this time I get a message that I've validated without any errors. So now I've created another error on my rent to buy line. So let's click on Validate. Okay, so this time, again, it's telling me that it's rent, my rent to buy line, but it's telling me the total scheme's costs less the total of capital contributions, transfer value, and funding requested must be 0. So that's a cost issue. So let's click on Close. Let's go into the rent to buy and then look at the scheme costs tab. Okay, when I look at scheme costs, I can see that there is a surplus or deficit on this line because of the value that's non-zero in item L. So I would go back and I would check my scheme costs that I've added. And sometimes you also need to check your capital contributions because you may have made the error there and it's using that in what you're doing. So let me check my values, and I can see that one, I've entered it wrong. It should have had an extra £10,000 in it. And as soon as I've added that, even before I've saved, now the surplus or deficit is 0. So let's click on the Save button, close the window, and on the main window, validate again. Okay, so validated without errors, so we've fixed that error. So I've made another change on this indicative line. This time I've added construction innovation and I've chosen an option that isn't not known or not applicable. Okay, so when I click on save, everything goes through fine. Then I'm going to click on validate. So this time I get an error message. This offer line cannot be validated until the additional information screen has been completed. So let me click on close. And let me go into the rent to buy line. And when I go into there, I can see this last tab, additional information. Let's click on that. Okay, so this is telling us construction innovation, and it tells us to check the prospectus for paragraphs 54 to 58. And you then have to answer the question, what are the expected benefits from the form of construction innovation being used? The prospectus gives you a few more details on that and what is the potential for wider adoption. Now, to enter your response there, you would double click on response, and a new window will appear. And this is where you would type your information in. So I'm going to put some dummy data. Okay, so I've entered that data and I now click on save. Okay, you would obviously put in appropriate comments at that point. So cancel because I've already saved, and then validate. So this time validated without any errors because we have the additional information on construction innovation. Now that same error message could appear on both firm and indicative lines. Okay, so I've now set up a firm offer line for Help to Buy shared ownership. I'm now going to click on save. Okay, so planning forecast consent date cannot be lapsed. So when I look at the bottom of my screen, it's the 20th of June. If I look here, this is saying the forecast date is the 17th of June, which is obviously already gone. Now that's the actual date for planning consent. What I can do is click in the actual tick box and then click on save, and it will now accept that as a lapse date because it was an actual date. So I'm now going to try and validate this offer line. So click on cancel, and from the main offer line screen, click on validate. So I'm now back on my shared ownership line. And remember, this is a firm line as indicated here. I'm going to click on validate. When I validate, I get a message saying the offer line can't be validated until additional information screen has been completed. Okay, so got rid of the message and let me go into the line. Help to Buy shared ownership, additional information tab. Okay, now this error would appear on both a firm and on an indicative line. So it says they're both in relation to shared ownership and they both give me references in the prospectus. So there's two questions that I have to respond to. So evidence and analysis to make you confident that the proposed housing will be affordable to the target market. And there are some further questions that you might want to consider in answering that below. And then the second question, what is your assessment of the sales risk and how will that be mitigated? And again, some information on what you might consider in your response. So again, to add your response, you click on the response button, and then you would enter proper data . Okay, I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to now respond to the second. So I'm obviously just putting in dummy values here so that I've got something in there so that I can demonstrate the validation. So click on cancel. And now I'm going to validate that line again. Okay, so this time I've got validated without errors. Click on OK, and that returns me to the offer. So I'm now back to the shared ownership line, and this time I've made a change to the units. So before I validate, let's see what that change is. Okay, so go to the units, and what you can see now is that this type of housing is for disabled and vulnerable people. So let's click on cancel and let's validate. So when I validate, it says the offer line can't be validated until the additional information screen has been completed. So let's close the window and let's go into the shared ownership line and the additional information. So we've now got 1, 2, 3 questions about disabled and vulnerable people to complete. So how will the topology, location and design of the accommodation ensure it can continue to meet the needs of the relevant client group? Is revenue funded needed for the intended operation of the accommodation, and has this been identified? Then what is the exit plan or alternative use for the building should commissioning priorities change? Okay, so I've got 3 items, and I'm going to, in my demonstration, put in some comments there. Okay, you would obviously add appropriate values in there, and I'm going to put the same one in each. Okay, so they've obviously saved as you go along from the screen, individual screens. So click on cancel. Now let's validate again. So this time validated without errors because we have that information there already. So I'm going to click on OK to remove that message. Error messages you might get when validating the offer. So I'm now at the offer, and I'm now going to try and validate that offer. So when I do that, I get 3 error messages. So the first one is that indicative line with an ID is invalid. Second one's the same, different ID. And third one is the same, different ID. So what I can do is I can click on the error reference, because that's actually my offer line number. Okay, so I've gone to the first one, and I can see that that's marked as invalid. So let's validate it. Validated without errors. So click on the OK button and cancel. Okay, so then taken back to my error messages window. So it also told me that this ID was invalid. So click on my error reference. Yes, I can see that it's invalid there, and let's validate. So this time I've got 2 error messages that I'd need to go and look at. And I'm getting these messages because I haven't checked that I've validated all the lines. So I'm going to go away and do that and check everything is validated and then restart the video. So I've now validated all my offer lines, and I can see that from the offer line screen. If you look at the status, they're all marked as new. And then if you can see next to it, we've got validate. And a tick indicates that the line has been validated. So let's close that and go into the offer. So the offer's here. And I'm now going to try and validate this now that all lines are validated. Okay, so it's successfully validated with no errors. Submitting the offer. So I'm now going to go into the offer and check I've done everything that I need to there. Okay, so when I look at the offer, I can see that contributions have come through as I've been adding information. And the other button I need to check is employment and skills. Now it identifies here that the statement for employment and skills has not been started. So let's click on edit. Okay, and I have 4 questions to respond to. And on these, I just need to add a value. So I just click, and I'm going to put 20, 10, and I'm going to have none at level 3 and none at level 4. So these questions are all about apprenticeships. So you enter values in there, click on save. You must check this tick box. I need to indicate you've read and understood the questions, and then click on the save button. Okay, so I've now completed that step. So I can now submit that. And then close. And then I can now look to validate and submit the offer. So let's go back to my main offer screen and click the validate button. So validated without errors. And I should now be able to submit the offer. To do that, I click on the submit button. Okay, so I then get some statements to read and check. So by submitting the offer, the organisation's board has approved, at least in principle, the offer submitted, that no scheme bid for under Shared Ownership and Affordable Homes Programme 1621 will displace delivery under any other agency programmes. And then finally, that by submitting this offer, we are consenting that the relevant financial information provided to the social housing regulator may be shared with HCA. So I would add some appropriate comments at the bottom. All statements confirmed by training. And then click on enter. Okay, so I have now submitted that offer to HCA. Okay, so we're now on our submitted offer line, as you can see at the top of the screen here. Now, if you needed to make any changes during the bidding round once you've submitted, you will need to unsubmit that offer, and you'll have an unsubmit button at the bottom of the screen. I haven't got that shown on my screen because I'm using a special version of IMS for these videos that doesn't allow me to do that. So you would click on unsubmit, and then you would be able to go back and make changes to your offer lines as you need to. So some reminders before we close. So you must add all the additional information before submitting. You can't add it afterwards. And as you've seen, offer lines won't validate successfully if that missing information isn't completed. Within a bidding round, you validate an offer line, and then you validate the offer and then submit the offer. For those of you that have been doing CME under 1518, you used to validate and submit each offer line. In a bidding round, it's slightly different. So this bidding round is also closed, and that means that HCA staff can't see what you're inputting or have input until a bidding round is closed. However, when the bidding round closes, you won't be able to see what's been submitted unless HCA have to refer lines back to yourself. That will all change once the assessment has been completed and the outcomes notified to providers. So thanks very much for watching this video. We hope you found it helpful. If you do have any feedback on the video, please feel free to send it to our IMS training inbox, the address for which is on screen. Thank you.